And we're live. I usually wait a few minutes for people to file in before we start talking. All right.
Does that mean we have to wait to start drinking?
No, we can start drinking now.
Okay. Awesome.
Well,
Good.
I'm pouring some
I
of that
started
pound
an hour ago.
Here we go. Waste group cap.
Yeah. Both of you guys' Dornfelder are screw caps too, so maybe we can discuss that.
Sure.
All right, I guess we'll start up here. Welcome to those of you tuning in for another one of our Santa Rita Hills Wine Alliance sessions. I call them Santa Rita Hills to You. That's the file I've been using for this. If you haven't joined us before, we've been doing we actually counted up last week. We've done more than 27 producers since we started in June from the Santa Rita Hills. So it's been quite an exploration. All the videos, I believe, are on the Santa Rita Hills Wine Alliance webpage or their Facebook page. So if you missed some, you can go back and check those. We actually have one of our few return guests today. We have Aaron Walker from Pali Vineyards is with us today. And then we also have Michael and Lisa from Sweetzer Cellars. And we have David Lacey, who's involved with the old Huber Vineyard, now known as Chapel Vineyards, which is kind of the through line for tonight's conversation. It's a really cool property on Highway 246 that has a cool, very interesting backstory and grows obviously great Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, as all the vineyards do in the Santa Rita Hills, but also a very fun grape, a German grape called Dornfelder. And so we actually get to try a Chardonnay from the vineyard by Aaron at Pali. We have a Pinot Noir, a 2015 Pinot Noir from the vineyard by Sweetzer Cellars. Then we also are going to try two of the Dornfelders from the vineyard, both from Aaron's other brand, Tower 15, and from Sweetzer. And then we're also tasting a 2016 Long Cantata vineyard from the other side of the Santa Rita Hills on Santa Rosa Road by Sweetzer Cellars. So we're going to hear their story. We'll hear a little bit more of Aaron's backstory, and we'll hear a little bit or a lot about that vineyard too. Also, if you're keeping your calendar, we have actually two more. We've been doing this every other week, but this month we're actually doing 3 weeks in a row. So we have tonight's discussion, and then we're actually doing kind of a celebratory one for Greg Brewer next weekend or next Tuesday, who was named Wine Enthusiast Winemaker of the Year, and that's in the whole world, not just America. So we're going to toast Greg and have him come on and talk about his career. And then the week after that, we're having Samsara and Kessler Hawk come on. Samsara makes the Kessler Hawk, so Kessler Hawk will bring some of their wines on. Samsara will bring their Kessler Hawk and some of their other wines, and so that should be fun too. And that'll round out the year. And we'll probably keep going in the new year. There seems to be a lot of interest, so we'll probably keep it going. So if you're a producer out there that's interested in being featured, reach out to Barbara at the Santa Rita Hills Wine Alliance, and we can set that up. As for myself, I'm Matt Kedman. I am the senior editor at the Santa Barbara Independent, where I've been since 1999 and writing about wine really soon after that. So almost 20 years of writing about wine, especially intensely over the last decade or so. I'm also a contributing editor for Wine Enthusiast, where I review anywhere from 150 to 300 wines a month from the entire Central Coast, and then do all the kind of cultural coverage from this area as well. And I'm also the author of this book that just landed this week after 3 years of plotting and production called Vines and Vision, The Winemakers of Santa Barbara County. It's very thick, see? It's a serious book. Beautiful pictures by Macduff Everton, brilliant words by some writer, and it should be, I think, a document that will kind of be a touch point for this region for years to come. So we're excited about that coming out now. All right, so let's dive into the wine and to the Huber. So my experience with the Huber Vineyard goes back to a tasting in Santa Barbara. It was probably a dozen years ago or so now. And I was actually at this tasting. It was when Bob Wesley from, I think he was then at the Wine Hound, tried to redo a wine futures tasting. So a bunch of producers came to the Museum of Natural History and poured some wines. And I was there kind of as a representative for a group of friends to buy wines and going around tasting all these wines, taking notes, and time was going on. So I was taking more funny notes as time went on. And I got to this, I think it was by Ampelo Cellars, this Huber Vineyard Dornfelder. And I tasted it and I was like, whoa, it had this kind of minty character to it. And so I wrote, my note to my friends was, great wine would go well with menthol cigarettes. So I sent Barbara a copy of, and so then I got into learning about this vineyard, and I learned it had been planted by Norman and Traudl Huber, who were Germans that had a decent career in I think in carpentry down in Orange County or Long Beach, and then came up in the 80s and bought this place and planted vineyards in the late 80s. And someone sent them some Dornfelder kind of secretly from Germany, and they didn't know what it was going to be, and it turned out to be these mysterious grapes. So anyway, that was a fascinating story to me. So in 2012, I wrote a story about that, and I think Barb is going to post that for us on the comment feed if anyone wants to read more. But then since then, I got to know the vineyard more so through Aaron and his wines at Pali, because they got interested and actually planted some vines nearby there. So Aaron, why don't you take this away so I stop blabbing on and tell us about how you learned tell us a little bit about your background. I think people have heard a little bit of your background before, but how you got into wine quickly, and then how you found out about Huber Vineyard, which is now known as Chapel Vineyards.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Matt. And congratulations on the book. That's an amazing accomplishment. You and Macduff put together an extremely thorough and very beautiful book.
Thank you.
So let me be the first on this call to say congratulations on that. And thank you for the giant picture of myself in there as well.
Makes you look even bigger than you are. So.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about myself as we're here to talk more about the vineyard and the history of what is now called Chapel Vineyard, which, looking back on it now, we've got 8 years of history with that vineyard, which is, not insignificant at this point. And so quickly, I started with Pali in 2007. Pali started as a brand in 2005. So I've been with Pali for many years, and certainly all the years that we've worked with Huber/Chapel Vineyard. We started a second label called Tower 15 in and around 2010 as a spinoff, so that we could produce things other than Pinot and Chardonnay. And so that's where the Dornfelder falls under. So we've got our two brands represented today, the Pali brand, which is just Pinot and Chardonnay, and Dornfelder, or Tower 15 rather, which the Dornfelder is bottled under. But we used Tower 15 as a catch-all for any cool warm climate, hot climate varieties that we want to bottle. And so those are usually Bordeaux and Rhone varieties, but if something cool comes along, like a really dark, inky German varietal that we've never heard of, then, we're all about it. So, so that's where Tower 15 comes in. We discovered the Dornfelder kind of the same, not exactly the same way as you, Matt, but, being local in the area and having tasted both Ampelos and the Huber version, those were the only two Dornfelders I'd ever tried in my life. And so that was, I think, probably has become the signature grape of that vineyard, since no one else really grows it anywhere. But we first started getting grapes from that vineyard back in 2013, and we only were allowed Pinot and Chardonnay. We couldn't get our hands on the Dornfelder. It was spoken for, the 3 acres or 2.5 acres that's planted there. So 2013, we purchased Pinot and Chardonnay grapes from that vineyard. After planting our own vineyard, I should back up a year, 2012, we planted 50 acres right across the road, right across Highway 246 up Gypsy Canyon Road there. We planted 50 acres of our own estate vineyard in 2012. And so 2013, we were still waiting for that vineyard to come online. And so we were still purchasing all of our grapes. And we liked the Pinot and Chardonnay so much from that vineyard that in 2014, the following year, when the opportunity for us to lease the whole vineyard came about, we took advantage of that and signed a 3-year lease with Norm and Troudel, and took over the vineyard and all the farming and grape growing activities there. And so,
they had just, I mean, they were getting older and they were just interested in not having to deal with it anymore.
Exactly. They were looking for a way out. Their ideal, my understanding is their dream was that one of their children would have taken over and shown an interest, but that didn't turn out to be the case. And so they were looking for somebody to either purchase it or I think that was after, a year or two of us leasing it from them, they kind of saw the writing on the wall about not handing it down to their children. And so they started actively looking for a buyer. And for sure in 2017, when our lease expired and we told them that we weren't going to be able to renew it because our own vineyard was so productive that we didn't need that vineyard as a source any longer, then that really kind of forced their hand. And fortunately, they obviously found a buyer. And so that's when the vineyard changed hands. So we had control and farming of the vineyard for the last 3 years of the Huber vineyard, as it was known as Huber. But what I was going to say, we'll talk about the Chardonnay real quick. The one thing I was going to say is Norm, even though we signed a lease starting in 2014, we couldn't get our hands on the Dornfelder until 2016. He wouldn't even give up the Dornfelder. He kept those grapes for himself. Everything else he let us farm and have, but the Dornfelder he kept bottling as his own for the first 2 years of that 3-year contract. So,
that's great.
So anyways, but yeah, the Chardonnay. So is this your
last vintage of the Chardonnay then? Is that right?
So 17 was, no, we did not. So that's when Lady Leslie and David took over in 2017 with that vintage. Correct me if I'm wrong, David. I get confused. We have so many sources, but for grapes sometimes. But
we harvested.
Say again.
We harvested in 2017.
That's right, which is why the chapel name is on the bottle and not Huber.
Right,
so while we were farming it, it retained the Huber name since the Hubers still owned and lived on the property.
Right.
So backing up to 2013, our first vintage, the Chardonnay blew our minds. It's still one of the best wines out of all the wines we've made, and we're known for Pinots. To me, it's still one of the best wines we've ever made, hands down, the 2013 Chardonnay. It was so reminiscent of a great white Burgundy, just great minerality, great acidity, wonderful salinity. We didn't put a lot of oak on it, and to this day, it still drinks beautifully and fresh. And so we instantly fell in love with the Chardonnays from this property. And so the 2017 is not unlike the 2013. It's in that same vein for sure. It's got that minerality, salinity, acidity, and we don't use a whole bunch of oak, and because we don't want to cover up the natural beauty that's in this wine. And so we use maybe 30 to 40% new French oak at the most.
And give us the general, for people that don't know the area super well, like where this is on Highway 246 on the south side of 246, and where in relation between Lompo and Buellton?
Well, it's more west. Sorry, David, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Was that directed at David? Because I like having a chance to jump in. It's your property. You tell us where it is.
You know it very well. Jump in.
Yeah, you can finish there. We'll get to David in a second.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's as far as the AVA of the Santa Rita Hills, it's more on the western portion of the AVA. On the north side, there's Highway 246, which is the northern corridor that travels east and west, and then there's Santa Rosa Road, which parallels Highway 246. This is so kind of the northwest quadrant of Santa Rita Hills, more or less, if you were to divide it up that way. And what's significant about it is that it's very flat and low-lying, and it gets very, very cold. It takes grapes ripen there this is a very good thing for those that don't know, but the grapes are able to get a lot of hang time at this vineyard. We are usually waiting for the acidity to kind of mellow out, for the grapes to lose some acid, and for the sugars to come up at the same time. But it's in our history, it's one of the later picked vineyards that we work with, because it's such a cold little pocket there, which also presents issues with potential frost damage and things like that in the spring, which I know David's probably had to deal with, something we dealt with when we were farming the vineyard for sure.
Right. And are you still buying? You get the Dornfelder still? Do you not get the Chardonnay and Pinot anymore? Or
That's
you do?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Just
Cool.
Dornfelder. The last couple of years we've only been purchasing the Dornfelder.
Right.
As I said before, our own vineyard, 50 acres, is producing more than enough for our own purposes.
Right. All right. Well, we'll take our brief break away from Huber Vineyard for a second, and we'll learn about Sweetzer Cellars. So let's jump into this wine that you guys brought us from La Encantada Vineyard, which, as I mentioned before, is on the southern edge of the Santa Rita Hills along Santa Rosa Road. Your guys' bottles show up really nicely in digital format, I'm noticing right now. So
Yeah, we'd like to say we thought that through.
yeah.
I'm happy as
We really didn't think anything through.
So tell us about your guys' path to being winemakers. It sounds like it started in a white carpeted apartment in LA, huh?
Yeah, pretty common story. Lisa took a trip to France in the summer of 2008 with UC Davis winemaking program with no intention of making wine. At the last minute, I decided to join her. It was us and 30 undergraduates in dorms. Learned nothing, but it was
19-year-olds who signed up because it was like, this is the program.
You can drink.
Drinking,
Yeah,
we will not be sent out.
And our first morning, the full morning there, we went to Clos Vougeot. So that was the plus side of it.
Wow.
But there was no intention of ever making wine. But when we got back, I said to Lisa, it'd be fun to try to make wine. We got grapes from up in Napa, Cabernet, hauled them down late at night. I really was a second floor white carpeted apartment on Sweetzer Avenue that would get up to 110. And I knew nothing, and I was running to the internet. What do I do? And the wine came out pretty good. It was 3 years of Cabernet without planning to ever make it again. Every year I just thought, all right, this will be it. And we just gave the wine away. And I learned more every year. I learned how to cold stabilize in our bathtub with a lot of ice at 40 degrees and using argon. And really, at that point it was self-taught. And then after 5 years, it was either quit because it was getting kind of silly. It was a ton of grapes in the apartment. Either stop doing it or make it commercially. And I was ready to stop making it. And I just happened to find a place outside LA that let me come in and do my thing. And then we wanted to move out of there after a year. In 2014, we moved up to Buellton to make the wine. But we always have lived in Hollywood or West Hollywood. And I drive up at this past year, it was from first week of September till towards the end of October. Every morning from anytime leaving here, 4 to 6 in the morning, do whatever I have to do, turn around, come home. And we work pretty much 7 days a week as SAT tutors.
We still have our day jobs.
Yeah, I was tutoring.
And that's your day job is as SAT tutors?
I was tutoring
Oh, wow.
an hour ago. Yep.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Wow.
so we just drive,
Yeah.
I just drive back and forth to do what we have to do. So that was the start. And it was really just learning, to some degree by experience. And then once we moved production up to Buellton, clearly I asked questions and absorbed from other winemakers. So I wouldn't never say I'm self-taught, but that was it. And it was just.
And everybody in Santa Barbara County, in the Santa Rita Hills, is so generous with knowledge. It's so helpful. Like it's so collegial.
It was very comforting for me to be in Huber and see Aaron walking through as I was wondering when I would pick my grapes and just see him there and exchange some words. It was very comforting.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And what triggered the switch from doing the cab to doing Pinot? Was that because you started to come to Santa Barbara?
We like Pinot, and it was also closer. I mean, but it was mostly we like Pinot, and it was just having access. Our 2011, we got grapes from Center of Effort up, I think, in Arroyo Grande. In 2012, I answered an ad online, and it was Presqu'île looking to sell grapes, and Lisa and I showed up in a van with garbage cans, and they didn't bat an eye. They were still building the winery. They didn't bat an eye. They just dumped our stuff in our garbage cans, and from them we were able to get into other vineyards. So 2014 was our first
year at La Encantada.
first year at La Encantada and Rita's Crown and Presqu'île.
And then in 2015, one of the winemakers at the facility where we were making our wine, because he knew what we liked, said, I think you should look at Huber Vineyard. Like, I think you should check that out. So Michael and I went out there and we're walking around, and we love the fruit from there, but it's not picturesque the way that, say, La Encantada or Presqu'île or Rita's Crown is. And I'm like, why did he send us here? And we're in the sandy soil, and Norm Huber comes up on his little tractor.
And he says, who are you?
Who are you?
And he's not an intimidating guy, but that was intimidating.
It was. It definitely was. And when he found out that we were there to buy grapes, he invited us into the house, and Travel came in with like the brisket crackers and her jams, and the dogs were there. And it was...
We were sold.
We were sold. And then they pulled out the Dornfelder, which we'll talk about later. And I was like, we have to get
But the winemaker who actually recommended me to Huber actually said it was the best Pinot he had. He must have been talking about 2013 vintage, I would think, 2012. He said it was the best Pinot he had from the area. And we were considering a different vineyard. And he said, no, you gotta go with Huber.
Yeah.
So, so it's
but I mean, you are right. It's a relatively flat vineyard. I mean, it's not big aspects or cliffs or anything like that. But sometimes those make the best wines, you know.
Well, it was also what Aaron was talking about, which, you know, because I'm sort of in my own little bubble, I'm thinking, wow, it's like this taking a long time to ripen. And are these acids like much higher than these other vineyards? Yeah. And David knows, because I'll text him numbers after I take samples of clusters, and I'll say, like, you know, we're not ready. Like, this is weirdly, you know, taking a while, and it's always worked out.
It's our last pick.
It's always our last pick.
Our last pick.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. Great. Let's talk real quickly about the La Encantada specifically, and then we can jump to the Huber, and we'll have David explain what's happening there currently.
So we chose the La Encantada just because we thought it would be, you know, a representation of sort of typical Santa Rita Hills, like it's the, you know, one of the sort of classic Santa Rita Hills vineyards. This is actually 2016. We just released it. It's our sort of lightest, kind of raciest Pinot from La Encantada that we've made. I just tried to do something a little different every year. So yeah, to me, like La Encantada is sort of the classic, and then Huber is its own. What we love about Huber is it's so unique. So La Encantada has the smoke and the, you know, this gets a little bit smoky, but the earth and the sort of typical Santa Rita Hills Pinot qualities. Mm-hmm. And this is our, this is probably the sort of the lightest, kind of raciest Pinot.
Yeah, this is definitely the lightest La Encantada we've ever done.
2015 was sort of a brutal year in terms of the heat that happened in September. I remember nights at 80 degrees, 85 degrees in September, right, you know, around harvest. So 2016, I just set out wanting to see what happened if we picked a little bit earlier. And I also just like doing something different every year.
Yeah, well, and you have to have, you know, you have a lineup of wines, so you kind of want different styles to, you know, stand out. I mean, you want your fans to be able to try different expressions. And what's great, it's light, and I love light Pinots, but it also has a ton of texture still, you know, in 2016. So that's great, and that's kind of testament to great grape growing too. So it's tasty. Let's move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, here we go. Let's go to the 2015 Huber.
All right, let's try the 2015 Huber. And David, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us about the current state of Huber, now Chapel Vineyard. I gather you come from a real estate background, right? And you've been helping kind of manage this property now?
Well, real estate and banking background, and still do real estate. In fact, I just sold a vineyard across the street last year to Tyler.
Yeah, Justin Will. I've been to that vineyard. It's a nice spot. Yeah.
It's a nice piece of property. So I've assisted Lady Leslie Ridley Tree, who is the owner of Chapel, assisted her in buying this in 2017. And and then have managed it for her since then. And we've been very fortunate in the farm group that farms it is Francisco Ramirez, who is extremely well known in the Santa Rita Hills area and has done lots of work with Greg Brewer and Steve Clifton and so forth. And that has gone a long ways toward allowing us to revitalize the vineyard. And it was not that it was in that bad a shape, but it was an older vineyard and it needed renewing.
Yeah, planted in the 1980s, no matter how well it's tended, you're going to want to. It's going to have some issues over time. So
it had issues, and Lady Ridley Tree has been absolutely adamant that she's not as concerned about profit or anything even approaching profit as she is about making and producing the very best grape that can possibly be produced. And so we just thrown all financial rigor to the winds and gone in and done a lot of things that nobody would ever do to such a small vineyard. As in last year, we replaced the entire irrigation system. We put in a metering system for the fertigation program, and lots of other technical things. Of course,
and Lady Ridley Tree is extremely well known in Santa Barbara for her philanthropy, for support of the arts community. What made her get into wine?
We were having dinner one night at actually at Pierre Lafon's restaurant, and we were having dinner one night, and I said, from real estate, I said a vineyard became available on MLS, the real estate site, and I said that I've just in casual conversation mentioned it, and she said, "Well, I want to buy a vineyard," and that was that. And so we bought the vineyard.
That's great. How many acres is the vineyard?
The total acreage is 28.5, and there's about 23.5 in vines.
Okay.
Yeah. We in resurrecting the vineyard, we obviously considered replanting the entire vineyard and putting it in a much more modern format. Right now, we're a 10-foot rows with 3.5-foot spacing, which is not particularly economical under any scenario. But Lady Ridley Tree was very, very adamant that she wanted to protect the older vines, and she did not want them pulled. If there was a way to resurrect them in any way that we could, that was the marching orders. That's what we were to do. So we absolutely changed a lot of our pruning practices and such, and quite frankly, did save a lot of the vines, and then did a lot of implanting as well. We've probably replaced and implanted about a third of the vineyard in the past 4 years. So lots and lots and lots of work and effort to make this right and produce the best grapes. I want to comment on a couple of things that both Aaron and Michael and Lisa have all said. That is one of the coldest vineyards in the entire area. It is cold there. And it takes forever for those grapes to get the sugar content up to a point where it's acceptable to any buyer. That has its own set of problems. And one of the giant problems, just in the farming aspect of all this, one of the giant problems is that in trying to get the sugar levels up, the orientation of the vineyard is all the rows are running directly east and west, such that the north side of the vines never see the sun, ever. And the south side of the vines, of course, have sun every day in constant sun. So when we are leafing, there's a natural inclination of the people in the field to, want to leaf and just strip everything. Well, that sounds good, except that if you do it on the south side, then you've got no protection and it's in the sun all day. And if we get a heat wave like we did this year, 105 degrees, the crop's ruined on the south side. Going along with that, the whole north side, south side aspect, there is a distinct difference in the maturity of the grapes on those two sides, to the extent that for this coming year, for 2021, I'm seriously considering 2 levels of pricing and offering to harvest north side or south side for somebody. And so that we have a much more uniform pick when we do pick, rather than a mix. And it's kind of I have to go back and calculate, what does it really cost to run the tractor up and down, and picking in that fashion, what kind of a premium is really involved. But that seems to be a much better option to offer our buyers. And again, our goal is to produce the finest crop we can possibly produce, not make the most money we can possibly make. We take the attitude of we want to put our grapes in the hands of the best producers, and it takes a good grape to make a great bottle of wine. So there we have it. Those are
great.
That's our mindset.
Great. Has anyone tried to make sparkling wine from there yet? Because it seems like if it's a place that has a lot of acid,
yes,
and struggles to get the sugar, not struggles in a good way, but still, like that's usually a ripe candidate for making sparkles.
One large restaurant chain would come in and harvest early, so we'll take it at like 21 bricks or 21 and a half or something like that for the Pinot, and they'll make sparkling out of that. Cool. But yes, they do it, and it makes a very nice sparkling. We're going to head toward the 2015 Pinot, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm drinking now. So yeah, if you guys want to talk about that,
that is one of the best Pinots I've had, and it is so unknown by everybody. It's a sleeper. It needs to be out there. It is a fantastic Pinot. I love that Pinot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're okay as winemakers, and we're terrible as marketers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the hardest part of the job.
He's the genius.
Selling the wines.
Yeah.
Marketing the wine is tough, and selling the grapes is tough.
Yeah.
So what did you guys, Michael? What do you remember particularly about this vintage? Was this your first? This was your first Huber vintage?
So, yeah, it was our first vintage in what was then Huber. I don't remember if we had tasted a Pinot from there before. I know
Except theirs. We tasted theirs when.
Huber. Yes, we did. We did taste Huber. So, but I do remember, and it might have at some point talking with Norm, he sort of warned me that he never picked in September, meaning it was always October or later. And I took it as like this subtle, like, don't think of doing this. And I went to check, and this was actually picked in September, on September 10th, which for this vineyard has been early, and that was the hot year. That was
yeah. You were saying 2015 was brutal. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the really bad, like a week long stretch where it never got cool at night. I don't know what happened at Huber, but I remember in the area it was in the 80s at night. So this was fairly blind, but I remember checking the numbers, and I remember thinking and tasting it, and just thinking still it seemed a little weird that this was coming in so much later than everything else, given that the Highway 246 felt kind of hot.
Yeah.
So this is still pretty much our release from Huber. We've limited released our 2016, but we slowly release our wines. Yeah, I mean,
like this one was actually the first of our 2015 vintages that we released, and I remember there was one night when we just like pulled a bottle, just to kind of like just wanted to see where it was. We weren't expecting anything. And again, the 15 vintage was so hot. And we opened it and we loved it. And it was so much lighter and more delicate than we thought it was going to be that we went downstairs and pulled another bottle and opened it just to make sure it wasn't like some weird fluke bottle. It was one of those.
Or we were sort of like in a euphoric mood from whatever we were watching on TV at the time.
Right. Whoa, wait, like.
So, yeah.
Whoa.
So, but this is classic to me. This is classic Huber in Chapel, and it's so different from everything else that we make. It's beautiful Pinot. There's something sort of floral always to me, and that minty, mentholy thing that Pinots have. And this is in terms of the making of it. We've always 100% destemmed. I try to make the wine as reductively as possible, just in terms of, just limiting oxygen exposure. I don't really like even going into barrels. I won't routinely taste out of barrels. And I think that helps in terms of, the freshness in the wine, but also the aging in the bottle. So we find that our, the wines just for us take a little bit longer. 2016 Huber, we've released limitedly, but I think it's got many, more years ahead of it, and it'll just get better. So this to me, though, is classic Huber for us.
So you guys hold on to your vintages for a little while before release. Like a lot of people right now, I've tasted some 2019 Pinots actually, and we're usually 16 to 20 months in the barrel, and after bottling, we literally will not taste anything for a year and a half. Like I learned the lesson way back. So kind of like assume it's going to be good and let it sit. So we released pretty late. So
we just released the 2016 Chardonnay. We actually, what year's our Chardonnay from Chapel? Because we have a Chapel Chardonnay.
I think it's 2018.
2018 that we're just sitting on.
Yeah. So we hold in bottle for a while, but it depends on, we'll taste once, and if it seems like it's good to go, we'll release it, but we feel like they're usually better, and better if we wait on it, and they still have years ahead of that. So yeah, we're mostly in our still 2014, 2015, and a few 2016s.
It's the luxury still that we make on is that we don't have to be generating cash flow from just like releasing stuff. So we can hang on to it until we actually like it.
That might not have been the right thing to say.
Well, no, but I mean, there is a.
If anybody out there has children, you understand that when they're adolescents, they're monsters. And like, if you need to leave them at boarding school for another year, leave them at boarding school for another year. And when they're ready to release onto the world, release them onto the world.
So extrapolating to wine, when they're adolescents, they're good, but when they're older, they're great. So there you go.
Nice turn there. Yeah. No, it's a great. I mean,
period. Matt's tasted a lot of wine. We understand.
Yeah, and I wrote an article when I early on when I started Wine Enthusiast. So that started there in 2014. So it was a year or so after that. I was tasting a lot of the. I started right when a lot of other publications were hitting on the 2011s as being underripe, and they were really talking more about Napa, but they kind of broad brushed the entire vintage. And then I'm tasting 2011s alongside 2012s and maybe even some 2013s. And I'm like, these 2011s are awesome. And it was because people were patient enough to let them sit in the bottle. And so particularly for certain vintages, but I know certain wineries also will just, they don't have, if you don't need that money coming in right away, you can sit a little longer and slowly.
Yeah, that's what we feel about the 2016s. And it was sort of an experiment. Let's pick them a little bit earlier, or make a different style and just sit on them longer and see what happens. So yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Great. It's a great wine. Let's get into Dornfelder. Let's try just for the sake of changing up the conversation a little bit. Let's try Aaron's first, the Tower 15. Both you guys brought 2017s.
Oh yay! This is good.
So we could have a battle.
Exactly.
Battle. Dornfelder.
So Aaron, what do you know about Dornfelder? because I don't know a whole lot. I mean, I know that in Germany, this is what Norm and Traddle told me, that it was a kind of a cheap, like the grocery store Plonk wine. You know, you go in and buy your liter of wine, and it's cheap wine. But it seems like if you grow it well, it can be quite good. So what do you know about it? And
well, that's my understanding of the grape too. I knew nothing, never even heard of it until I was introduced to the Huber Dornfelder. Yeah, the inky color is what everybody trips out on.
So good.
I can't even barely see through it.
No, you can't shine a light through it usually. It's so dark. But it's also great. My understanding too in Germany is it works great for adding body and color to Pinot Noir as a blender. So it'll be even interplanted within vineyards. And Germany being very cold, you know, they don't get as much ripening as, you know, other places. And so having something that's a little bit dark and fleshy and rich to blend in and kind of beef up, you know, it's not the first time that winemakers have been accused of adding another variety into Pinot Noir to add color.
I've heard that some of this gets into Pinot. Yes.
Right. Yeah. In fact, Norm was encouraging me to use it in the Pinot when we took over the vineyard. He just kept saying, "Oh yeah, you just throw some of that in with your Pinot. You got to do it." It makes
I mean,
better.
you probably could like add an amount that didn't change the flavor or nose at all, but amplified or made the color.
It would have
darker.
to be a small amount. Thank God the color goes a really long way, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So but it does, you know, it definitely has a gaming quality on the nose, an iron and kind of like blood quality to it, which you know I find really interesting actually. And what's always fascinated me, and I think most people with this wine, is that it doesn't come across on the palate the way you expect it to. It's much lighter and higher in acid. You know, with the color and even the nose, you expect it to be a more richer, more full-bodied style wine. But given that it grows in cool climates and it has high acidity, that's not the case necessarily. So it's really kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde type of wine, which is really fun. The color, the darkness of it, you know, we tell people it'll stain everything it touches, including the glass that you pour it in. And it's true. It's so dark. The pigment is so dark. It's one of the few grapes that actually has color in the pulp. I
was going to ask, is it one, because there's Alicante Boucher and there's a couple other weird ones, but so this one does have a little bit of color to the flesh.
Not as much as Alicante Boucher, but it does. Yeah, it's not. You can't make a clear wine out of it as you can with most red wine grapes, because the pulp is kind of a rose color, you know, pinkish color.
Have you ever bled any off for a rosé or anything?
We've never attempted a rosé, no. But going back to like blending, what I wanted to mention, one of the most popular wines that we ever made from that vineyard was, I think it was it was our final year farming it too. It was 2016, and there was about 4 rows in the vineyard that Norm had replanted in spots kind of blindly, because it turned out that those 4, David's laughing, he knows what I'm talking about. There's these 4 rows that were planted to all 3 varieties, Chard, Pinot, and Dornfelder. And we actually had those rows written out of our contract because they were just too confusing for us to farm and take. And so we only paid for 22 acres instead of the full 23.5 acres because of that. But that last vintage, I had the crew go through and just harvest all those rows all together, just throw it all together. We crushed it all up, fermented it, put it on tap in our tasting rooms as a field blend, a Huber field blend, and kind of an homage to the Hubers as our last vintage there. And not this day, but within the last 12 months, I've still had people asking me if I'm going to ever do that one again. And I talked to David. I know you and I talked about it briefly a year or two ago, and he actually, you know, he had the foresight to go through and fix those rows and get them kind of organized to the right varieties. But it was a very successful wine for us, and the blend of all 3 grapes together.
Flavor profile?
It was like a light, chillable red wine. You know, it wasn't a heavy red wine, but it was definitely red. But it was light in body, and it was almost, you know, something you could serve slightly chilled, probably. And then, you know, we also did a late harvest Chardonnay one year from there by accident, where the crews that were farming the vineyard missed like 2 rows they were harvesting at night, and and no one caught it until a week or 2 later. And so I made the decision, let's let them hang, and we'll do a late harvest, see what happens, and got it pretty ripe, you know, like 33 bricks or something. Made a real sweet style wine out of it, and then
No botrytis though.
No, there was no, but it was just
Yeah.
dehydration primarily, just heavy ripening, and then it came out really nice. It oxidized in barrel. I let it oxidize intentionally, and it picked up like this kind of sherry style quality to it, and came out really nice. So we played around a bit with the vineyard, but the Dornfelder has always been the most popular wine that we've made from Huber. We have customers that come back for it. They're waiting on the next release each year. Because we produce it in such limited quantities that it sells out very fast. And then, I think you mentioned, can't remember. No, you didn't mention, but we planted Dornfelder at our vineyard across the road just this year. We got vines.
Where did you get it? What nursery had it? Like it's a California nursery?
We were shocked. It was one of the main. There's like 3 main nurseries in California that most vineyards source from, and it was one of those. Sunridge is what it's called. But we were fully expecting to go to David and ask to buy clippings to do our own nursery and start from the budwood or the clippings from Huber Vineyard, which looking back on it as I'm talking about it now, would have actually been a little bit cooler of a story rather than saying we got it from this nursery in the Central Valley. But regardless, we were surprised that they had the Dornfelder vines available, and so we planted just 1 acre this year in our vineyard. Replaced a little bit of Pinot.
Are you sure it's Dornfelder?
No, I have no idea. And my biggest fear is that it's not going to have the same color and pigmentation that this one does. That it might be a different variation, a different clone that wouldn't be recognized by our
might
customers.
Be Graciano.
Well, it's certified as Dornfelder, so the nursery claims that's actually what it is.
Was what all own rooted?
No, we had selected rootstock.
Oh,
it's not own rooted.
All of ours is own rooted.
Right. Yeah.
And what is the
From
acres
the original,
of Dornfelder?
Excuse me.
How many acres of Dornfelder are there at Chapel?
For us, there's only 1.5 acres total. That's it.
And you, Aaron?
1 acre.
And does it hang heavy? Like, how does it grow? Does it make a big crop?
At the beginning of the season, when you're doing crop estimate, harvest estimate, it reads as 8 tons an acre is what you're going to get. That stuff has to hang on the vines so long to get the bricks up. You can't harvest it until October, and by the time you harvest it, you're lucky to get 2 tons. That's the shrinkage.
And they're giant clusters with huge. The berries are giant, like ping pong balls. Not quite, but yeah.
So it's interesting. It's hard to get dark wine out of usually big berries, but you're saying the berries have some pigmentation to the flesh, so that would explain that, I guess.
And it's delicious to eat in the vineyard, just picking and eating.
Right.
Really very sweet.
Great. Let's move on to our last wine of the night, the Sweetzer Dornfelder, which will now be the 4th Dornfelder I guess I've ever tried, 4th producer to make Dornfelder from this vineyard that I've ever tried. So
cool.
Yeah, so this was our first year also making Dornfelder from anywhere. It was kind of blind, but we had tasted
we tasted Norm's.
Well, we tasted others too.
Yeah.
And we felt comfortable sort of cutting down the middle of what we had tasted, sort of sticking to our comfort zone of winemaking, which is sort of down the middle. The clusters were like nothing I'd seen before. It was hard for me to gauge it in terms of picking. Like I just couldn't quite get my head around it. I would taste it, and then I would, take samples and, gauge the bricks and gauge the pH. But it's still, it's a hard one for me to get my head around in terms of picking. So this was really sort of a shot in the dark for us, but I knew what we were trying to do. And, we had sort of models on either end of what we were trying to do. And I can support what Aaron is saying about the color. If you probably go somewhere on the Sweetzer page, you will see that Lisa has many shots of my hand stained black,
Yeah.
or the sorting table stained black from the grapes.
Yeah. And it is one of those, like what Aaron was saying. I have at least 2 pairs of sneakers that are permanently stolen from wearing on Dornfelder days.
You mean Dornfelder?
Can I tell you a little secret real quick? Sometimes during harvest, if I haven't been getting my hands literally dirty enough because I have such a great crew that do all my work, if I want to make it look like I've been working hard, I stick my hands in the Dornfelder grapes just to stain them so that they look like I've been a real winemaker.
Now I proudly wear those Dornfelder gloves for days.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You get a lot. I mean, there's you definitely got some game on the Tower 15, but I think this even amplifies the game aspect a little bit more, which I think is cool.
Yeah. So again, we kind of made this in the way we make everything else, which was just the stemmed. My guess, I think we probably had 2 barrels of this. I'm sure one of them was new oak. I think we left it, half new oak for the whole time.
It sucks all that up. I mean, there's not it doesn't show a lot of oak, really.
No. And so I don't have my specs with me in terms of when we pick, but Dornfelder is always the last grape we ever pick from anywhere. So this.
Do you guys know offhand the latest you've picked it? Like, are we talking November style or?
No, end of October.
Okay.
End of October has been the latest. And it is just, this is why I have a hard time gauging it, because I'll taste it. And when it's not ripe, I get it. But then I'll taste it and I'll think, okay, that's pretty ripe. And then I'll go and, take a sample. And I think I might have texted David this year or last year and said, whoa, I just took a sample of what I thought, would have been pretty ripe. And it was like 18 and a half bricks. So, so I don't get it. And then the acid, just stay high, and that it's a hard one for me.
It could be the Santa Rita Hills Lambrusco. I mean,
yeah,
I'm
sparkling dark red wine. Yeah.
And now what you were asking about with the rosé, there is some vineyard up north. And I mean, like up north, like Sierra Mont, I'm blanking, but they do a rosé of Dornfelder. Wine shop I know had it, and I was like, what the actual? And by the time I actually showed up, they were sold out and it was gone. But somebody out there in Northern California is doing a rosé of Dornfelder. So
people are into it. People like Dornfelder, it seems. There's just not any out there to have
when they come across it. Yeah.
How many cases do you guys each, Sweetzer Cellars, how many cases do you make of the Dornfelder?
I think we did 50.
This was 50 something, and it's 35. That's all we get. We heavily sort. And when
I say we sort,
yeah.
Like we're the ones on the sorting table. So it's not, we're not sourcing that.
But but still it's 35, maybe. Yeah.
Right. Aaron, how many cases do you guys make?
Maybe twice that, like 75 to 100 cases. It seems the first year or two, like 16, 17, the yields were a little higher than the last couple of years. The yields and this year especially, the yields were definitely down. So it's just nature of farming, but so it varies. But it's never yielded heavy for us. And given that we're getting like 3/4 of an acre, I don't think we've ever done more than 120 cases.
Right. And David, the estate isn't making any wine at the moment, right?
We make no wine. Lady Ridley Tree is just adamant that we not make any, that we only sell grapes. Our entire business be produce the best grapes we can possibly produce.
Yeah. Does she enjoy wine?
Well, she enjoys taste. I mean, she doesn't drink a lot of it, but she enjoys it. And but she's very proud of her vineyard, and she wants it to be the very best.
And what with the name Chapel Vineyards? What does the chapel refer to?
There is the others may know more about this than I do from Norm and Trudel, but she had, I guess, had to have her kidneys replaced. Is that correct? From yeah, and a neighbor donated a kidney for her, and there's a one-person chapel that was built to say thank you for her kidney. And so behind the house, there's a one-person chapel. And so it's Chapel Vineyard for that.
Wow. So the new name actually is Huber related.
Yes.
Oh,
The chapel is on the property. Yeah, it's cool.
That's very cool. Great. Well, I think we've covered most we needed to cover. Well, actually, no. So Pali, you have tasting rooms actually in a lot of places. So where can we find your wines, Aaron?
Oh, thank you, Matt. Well, there's our website online. You can go to paliwineco.com. But yeah, our tasting rooms are in Lompo, right across the street from Sweetzer, in the Lompo Wine Ghetto, which is where the winery is located. Being in Lompoc, separate location from the tasting room, but our winery is in Lompoc. Santa Barbara in the Funk Zone is our flagship tasting room, the first one that we opened in 2012. And then in recent years, we've expanded into Los Angeles in the Arts District, also in San Diego in Little Italy neighborhood, and in Anaheim in the Packing District, which is about 2 miles from Disneyland in the downtown Anaheim area.
And Sweetzer, it sounds like you guys have a tasting room in Lompoc.
We do. We have a tasting room in Lompoc. It's closed right now because of what. But definitely online, sweetzercellars.com, and you can always email me, Lisa at sweetzercellars.com, because the Dornfelder is one of those secret wines that we don't actually have available on the website.
Yeah, we do encourage people to email rather than
reach
order
out
online.
directly to
So
me because we can hook you up.
Yeah.
And what overall, how much wine do you guys make? Like, what is your annual case production at this point?
Well, it's been anywhere from 2014 was 1,300 cases. 2020 will be much less than that. It's typically been probably 900 to 1,200 cases, but
Hovering around.
And that's like how many? Is 6 different wines? How many different wines typically?
no, we started off with Pinot and Chard, and we now still make 4 Pinots every year. We held off on Chard this year, but we have a Chenin Blanc from Jurassic Park coming. We have Syrah, we have Rosé, we have Sauvignon Blanc. Those are sort of our fun, sort of try something different wines.
But like Pali, we focus on Pinot and Chard, but then like we're having a side thing with Grenache.
It's hard not to.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Especially in Santa Barbara County, it's hard not to be a kid in a candy store when it comes to all the varieties.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that there's so many
Yeah.
different amazing vineyards. There's so much great farming going on, and there's so many different climate zones in Santa Barbara County. It's like
Exactly.
that it's really hard to, like, we try to stay focused, and then,
like our
It's got it, yeah.
have no focus.
and then color.
Yeah.
And David, which vineyard should we buy? I think I did see you. Do you have the what's the one? Alamo Creek is for sale?
I've got the Leaf Vineyard for sale.
Oh, love that vineyard.
That's a great vineyard. Yeah.
I've got that for sale, and maybe one other coming online. So it's
All right.
it's available, Aaron.
All right. Well, I think hopefully our owner Tim is listening, and he's looking for another property. So, Tim, you hear that?
We can all get together and plan Dornfelder.
In the interest of full disclosure, that's where our Syrah, Grenache,
Alamo
Sauvignon
Creek
Blanc,
Ranch.
Viognier have come from.
Yeah,
And we
We are huge
are
fans
huge
of
fans
that.
of that vineyard. So
it's
Great. Well, We'll buy it. We'll sell you the grapes, guys, Michael. And David, you'll get the commission, I guess. So.
Right, exactly.
I'll stay at the house on the weekends. How about that?
But yeah, we have a history with that vineyard too. We've worked with all those varieties as well from that vineyard. So.
Yeah.
And that's not even Santa Barbara County. That's now we're talking the greater Central Coast area, and not even a well-known region of Central Coast. But,
Yeah, it's on across the highway in San Luis Obispo County.
It's just
Right.
I literally screwed up our labels on this is all clear to TV now, but I accidentally.
Well, we were told it was Santa Maria, and it's in the town of Santa Maria, but it's not Santa Maria AVA. So we had an issue with our first year's wine from them being screen printed. It wasn't easy to rectify.
Yeah, that was
No.
Yeah.
A little whiteout tape over the.
literally that's because.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we divulge any more secrets, this has been a great chat, a real fun one, talking about Huber and Chapel, and now Chapel Vineyard, owned by Leslie Ridley Tree. Great wines, great people. Thanks for joining us all. Next week, we're going to chat with Greg Brewer about his Winemaker of the Year award from Wine Enthusiast. The following week, we're going to talk about Kessler Hawk Vineyard with Kessler Hawk, obviously, and Samsara. And then we're going to have some Christmas fun and figure out what we're going to do in the new year. But I think we're probably going to do some more of these. So please keep tuning in, and hope you had a good time. And cheers to Dornfelder and all you guys. And welcome to December, I guess.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Seeing everything.
Happy holidays.
Congratulations on your new book. That is fantastic.
Yeah, congratulations, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Second to that. Congratulations.